Hello and welcome to Films for the Very First Time. My name is Jordan, and with me is Casey McGeorge.
Oh, how's it going, everybody?
It's going good. Just to reiterate here, if this is your first episode you're listening to, each week one of us picks something the other one has not seen, hence the title Films for the Very First Time. And then we discuss it for the length of the episode that you're looking at the time there. So this week we are discussing which film, Casey?
We are going back to the early aughts, the early 2000s, and watching Terminator 3, Rise of the Machines. Uh, we previously, we're finishing up this trilogy. We've seen the original The Terminator a
Mm-hmm.
couple weeks ago. You saw Terminator 2, Judgment Day, which gave us the modern action movie, and now we're finishing this up. So I got two separate plot synopses. First, a machine from a post-apocalyptic future travels back in time to protect a man and a woman from an advanced robotic assassin to ensure they both survive a nuclear attack. Okay. Now, for someone else who might already know some of the story, now 25, John Connor lives with no record of his existence. No way he can be traced by Skynet. Out of the shadows of the future steps the TX, Skynet's most sophisticated cyborg killing machine yet. Connor's only hope for survival is the Terminator, his mysterious former assassin. Together, they must triumph over the technologically superior TX and forestall the looming threat of Judgment Day. So this was released June 30th of 2003 in Westwood out here in Los Angeles. It got a worldwide or United States release July 2nd, 2003. As we all know, July 4th weekend is a huge movie weekend. That's when a lot of your major blockbusters and various things are going to be released. Directed by Jonathan Mostow. Screenplay by John Brancato. Hope I pronounced that correctly. And Michael Ferris. And story by John Brancato, Michael Ferris, Tedi Sarafian. Not sure. Once again, not sure if I pronounced that correctly. Starring, of course, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Nick Stahl as John Connor, Claire Danes as his soon-to-be bride slash second in command, and featuring introducing us to Kristanna Loken as the TX, the female Terminator. Had a budget of $187.3 million, made 433.4 at the box office. So I was a very young man, a sergeant in the United States Army. I had just invaded Iraq when this came out in July of 2003. I had spent 6 months previously in Kuwait from October of 2002 until we started the invasion on March 19th. And I didn't leave Iraq until August of that year. So I didn't get a chance to see this at all until I came home. And I saw it on DVD. As a matter of fact, as you found out the other day, this is no longer on any streaming service, right?
Yeah.
It was previously for free on YouTube, and
Yeah, we
it's no
may have
longer
said
there.
that last episode, but that was we recorded that one a month ago, and then we took a break for Loki, and then we went to watch this, and I was like, "Oh crap, it's no longer
Yeah.
free."
So I busted out my DVD, right? Great. I forgot that I bought this DVD from Hollywood Video as a pre-owned DVD. So I think I got it for like $5 probably.
Wow.
So when I opened it up, it had like property of Hollywood Video like on the disc and everything. So, but it was still in good shape. It's still the full box and had the little booklet in it. Had both discs in there and everything. But I was like, oh man, I forgot. Yeah, there was a time where you could go to the video store and like buy used DVDs after a few months for pretty cheap instead of spending the 30 or
Mm-hmm.
$35 on them. Yeah, so I I wanted to see this obviously, but I never got a chance to until I got back.
Quick
A
question.
big
So, like,
yeah.
I know sometimes they might put on events overseas to show movies or stuff, but is there do they do that a lot at all, or is it just like really huge films? Like,
Well, you know what? I'm glad you said that because this was one of my notes from later. So, uh, hold on. It's in here. I know it. Um, so he did. Arnold Schwarzenegger did go over to Iraq. So let me take a step back. We were in Kuwait for 6 months. They had celebrities come over, various things, cowboys, cheerleaders, these people, that people, all this other great stuff. Cool. After we invaded, at some point, I want to say we had been there like 3 or 4 months. The USOs set up their first tour. I want to say like Chris Rock, or not Chris Rock. I'm sorry, Kid Rock was there. There was a couple other. There was like 3 or 4. I didn't get a chance to go to that one because it was limited space, and we were kind of far away from Baghdad where it was. So we had limited space on the number of people we could send down. But he did. Arnold Schwarzenegger himself did fly over on a USO tour and did show Terminator 3 to a bunch of troops at various places in Iraq, including a palace of their former dictator Saddam Hussein. I stayed in one of those palaces. It's really nice. Nice chandeliers. There was actually a zoo out front, and there was a lion that did not like me. That every time I walked by, he would get very perturbed, and we thought he got out of his cage one night, and I was very scared because I'm like, this guy's gonna hunt me down. But anyway, yeah. So he did go over there. We were able to get some bootleg movies over there from people who started selling their wares and things, to include someone who almost directed this movie, Ang Lee. Instead of directing this movie, this is another one of my notes, he chose to direct The Incredible Hulk, or The Hulk, whichever
just
one
the
that came
Hulk.
out.
Yeah,
The Hulk
and
that
it
came
was
out that
not
year.
great. Yeah.
It was not good. And not only was it not good, the version we saw was an incomplete version. So visually, the movie was complete, but it didn't have all the music and the sound effects in the background. And I picked
Like a
up on
test
this
screening almost.
as we immediately started watching it. And I'm like, there's no background sounds, there's no background music. Like, the dialogue was there and stuff, but I'm like, something was said. Like, after about 30 minutes, I'm like, something's off as I'm watching this. And it finally hit me, like, there's no other sounds, there's no music. Like, I can't really get behind this. It made me feel weird. And everyone else who was watching was like, "Oh, no, that's how the movie's supposed to be." Come to find out, no, that's not how the movie was supposed to be. It was, yeah, it was probably like a test screening or something, and somehow it got to vendors in Iraq. Um, so yeah, one, you know, look, I'm not advocating for any illegal means of movie getting or television show getting. Like, people need to get paid for their work. But when you're in the middle of the deserts in Iraq in a war, like, I'm not gonna say I haven't partaken in that. Where were you in July of 2003?
So this was funny. I was just looking at the Wikipedia, right? And it says about how this movie, I think, was number one at the box office that first weekend, and then the next
Yeah.
weekend Pirates of the Caribbean took it over. And I saw Pirates of the Caribbean in July. I believe it was July. I might have my ticket here still. I was over at my parents last week, and I was taking pictures of movies. Like, they had movie stubs in these like scrapbooks and stuff like that, and they did have our Pirates ticket, which I saw, and it was while I was at Disney World. Actually, we went to the AMC at Disney World and saw Pirates of the Caribbean, which was really cool.
Oh, nice.
Um, I just wonder where this ticket. I took a screenshot of like all these tickets, and I have so many of them. Another one I just found too, by the way, that we were just talking about, Ang Lee's Hulk. I saw it June of 2003 at a White Marsh AMC theater, which was actually called Lowe's, I think, back then. But it was 2 days after my birthday, June 28th, 2003. We saw it with my dad and my friends, my friend and my friend's dad. And even back then in 2003, when I was easily impressed by stuff, I was not a fan of Ang Lee Hulk. um, so July 2003, just to set the scene still, my ticket was a child ticket, which means I was 12 years old, which means I was not going to see this movie in
By yourself.
theaters.
Oh.
And especially I hadn't seen any of the other ones, so that was a big,
Yeah, I get that.
a big stopping point there. But it was, yeah. So I had went and saw Pirates of the Caribbean instead that month, and I didn't go to the movies a lot back then. So really, it would have been probably the
Special
only
occasion.
Yeah, it probably would have been the only film I really went and saw that weekend. I mean, like that month or that summer.
That summer,
even.
yeah.
Really. Well, I saw Ang Lee Hulk, so I don't know, but not a lot of films, right? Like I don't know what else came out in 2003. I'm trying to think. Like, I don't think there was a Harry Potter film that year because Prisoner of Azkaban came out in 2004. So yeah, I probably saw Pirates and Ang Lee Hulk, and that was probably it for me for the summer.
So, speaking of Pirates of the Caribbean, right? Once again, I'm overseas, so I'm in Kuwait for the first couple months. We're in Iraq, right? News is really weird and hard to come by, especially like media news and entertainment news, and you don't know what's going on. Like, so you don't know what's going on. So, we get back. I want to say it was October, November, something like that in 2003. We used to have to do a 24-hour duty every now and then. Like we had like a day room in the barracks. That everyone go down, had big screen TV, pool tables. It's where the laundry room was, stuff like that. And we used to have to pull a duty in there, or they started making us pull a duty, a 24-hour duty in there. So like there would always be someone around in case something happened. I don't know. It's pretty stupid, but that's neither here nor there. So, either I brought my PlayStation 2 in, or my buddy brought his PlayStation 2 in. Whoever was on duty with me, I don't know. I can't remember which one. But there was PlayStation 2, which we played games, and then obviously the big thing everyone did at that time was using their PlayStation 2 as a DVD player. So he brought in Pirates of the Caribbean. Now, I'd only heard of it as a Disney park attraction. Like, I hadn't been to Disney at that point. I knew it was a Disney park attraction, and I had heard of it, but I knew nothing about it, right? So he's like, oh, man, this movie's great, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, thinking to myself, they made a movie off a ride at Disney World. What kind of nonsense is this? And he puts in Pirates of the Caribbean. For the next 2 hours and whatever it is, I was amazed. Like, that movie was...
It is fantastic. It is
it is still
fantastic
fantastic
movie. Yeah.
It is still unbelievable. But when, like, you're coming in and you hadn't seen anything like that, and especially when they get, 30, 45 minutes into the movie where the special effects start kicking in, and the pilot, like, you get the story of... I don't want to ruin it for anyone who might not have seen Pirates of the Caribbean. Although if you're listening to this and you haven't seen Pirates of the Caribbean, I'm going to give you permission to, like, stop this podcast right now.
Yeah.
Go watch Pirates of the Caribbean and then come back.
And I feel sorry for you if you've watched Rise of the Machines and have not watched Pirates of the Caribbean.
Like, what are you doing with your life? You need to see Pirates of the Caribbean. Like, stop our podcast, go spend the 2 hours, watch that, come back. We'll still be here. But when the story kicks off, really, and and as the transition with the pirates happens and everything, and you get the story, and you're just like, wow. Like, that was one of those movies where you're like, I wish I could have seen that. And now, I mean, you can see it on Blu-ray and HD, and it looks great. But I wish I could have seen that in the theater on the big screen. Like that could have been an amazing experience.
I know this is not a Pirates podcast, but I will just say seeing it in Disney Springs, or what was at the time downtown Disney, at the AMC theater there on like release weekend or close to it, was like really electric. Like, because the crowd is all Disney fans. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? So like
And they
it
were
was
probably
great.
waiting for that movie to come out. Like that was,
Yes, yeah.
I imagine that was probably a very highly anticipated movie. So I imagine like
It's my
that
favorite
was
ride too. So like, for a lot of people it's their favorite ride. So the fact that a movie was coming out, yeah, they were very excited.
the only thing I'll say too is I can imagine that was in Disney. That was probably like a $50 ticket.
No, it was actually. I wish I had the picture of it. I think
Maybe
something happened to my picture, but it was actually pretty cheap compared to nowadays.
I was gonna say maybe 20 or 25, considering this is in like 2003, and we have inflation to look at. Like right now, I imagine if like the new one came out, and you're watching it at Disney with those overpriced things, it's probably like a $30-$40 ticket.
No, that AMC theater is actually pretty decent. I saw Age of Ultron there when I worked there, and it was normal prices. I'll say it wasn't more expensive because it was Disney. The issue you run into is running out of tickets because of like big releases like that while people are on vacation. That's the theater they go to because they're not going to go to some of the further out Orlando theaters because
Yeah,
they're on property. If they're staying on Disney property, it's an easy bus to the
there's no
downtown
reason
Disney.
to leave.
Yeah.
Not only that, but like you might be in the park if it's summertime. You're in the park.
Yeah.
It's hot, especially if you're in Orlando. You got all the humidity. You might be like, hey, you know what? Let's take a break for about 2 hours. You know what? Let's go see, like, check out a movie, and you're still on the property. And like you said, you're still there.
Yeah.
So then you can kind of come out refreshed and then go back to your attractions. Yeah. So wow, you were how old? You said 12.
12. I will also say one thing I just looked up too is when did he become governor of California? It was this year, 2003. It was right after the movie.
We're gonna get to that.
Okay.
That's gonna come up in the play. All right. So real quick before we start, so James Cameron was he was interested, but he had absolutely no involvement with Terminator 3. In all fairness, he felt he told a complete story after Terminator 2. He felt he was done. Terminator 2 kind of ended the story, and he was like, you know what? I think I'm good there. Let me see. Andrew G. Vina and Mario Casar, who produced Terminator 2 Judgment Day through a company called Coralco Pictures, they obtained the rights because Coralco had a liquidation auction because they went bankrupt. And then they had negotiations with Galen Hurd from our previous two. Tedi Sarafian was hired to write the script, the first draft of the script in 1999. Mostow joined the project in 2001. He brings on John Brancato and Ferris to rewrite Sarafian's script. Schwarzenegger gets a record $30 million salary for Terminator 3. Filming takes place in California from April to September of 2002. Industrial Light and Magic and Stan Winston come back and do the special effects, which, spoiler alert, pretty damn good. Special effects look good in this one. Studios knew there was money in Terminator. They wanted to make a sequel. Schwarzenegger refused to do it unless James Cameron was directing, right? Makes sense. Those two kind of made magic with the first two. Like, why change it up for that one? Cameron really, at some point, like I said, felt he told a complete story. He doesn't want to go back for a third time. He tells them, just go ahead and do it. Ask for a shitload of money. His reasoning is, the character is as much as Arnold Schwarzenegger as it is James Cameron's character. Like, you can't have you kind of need both of those to make the Terminator, but if people think of the Terminator, they think of Arnold Schwarzenegger more than they think of James Cameron, right? He also thought there's no way studios are gonna take him and pay him a ridiculous amount of money for this, right? It's 2000s. Like, you might have had people with like 10, $15 million salaries for movies, but they're not going to go like 20, 25, 30 million. Like, it's absurd. Schwarzenegger said he confirms this in a talk show interview where when he went to him and they agreed to it, Cameron told him take the money and run. So that's how he ended up with Terminator 2. So also before we start, so like I said, this one has the female Terminator, the TX. So if you think about it, the original Terminator is just this kind of hulking tank of a giant robot and Arnold Schwarzenegger, right? Terminator 2 comes around, the 90s come around. You've got a liquid metal Terminator, kind of upgrades and everything, kind of with technology, and you got something a little different. So at the same time, we're in the early 2000s. The internet and everything else is kind of becoming a thing, and stuff like that is happening. But you've also got to find a way to up the ante of the villain in this movie, right?
Yeah.
So what do you do? I think they did a good job as far as the aspect of what the Terminator can do as far as doing stuff with the internet and controlling other machines. I think they did a great job with that.
Yeah.
They were sitting there and they were trying to figure out, like, okay, who's gonna be the villain. Eventually they decided they initially wanted a female character, but then they start pre-production and they think, how is the studio butts in and they're like, how are we going to have a woman that's intimidating against Arnold Schwarzenegger? So if you think back to the T-1000, even though it's what's his name? I can't remember his name.
Robert Patrick.
Yeah, even though it's Robert Patrick, once he gets going, right, you can, like, he is an intimidating figure, especially compared to this. Like we talked about last time. If Arnold Schwarzenegger was a tank, the T-1000 is just like this sleek, like Porsche, right? So they thought about making it a male Terminator. Initially, they wanted Vin Diesel. Backup choices include Kane Hodder, Andrew Banarski, don't know who that is, Shaquille O'Neal, Dwayne Johnson, The Rock, and even 50 Cent, which would have been one of his earlier in these breakout performances. A lot of those are large individuals, fairly muscular, so physically they can match up with Arnold Schwarzenegger, right? Especially if you get someone like Shaquille O'Neal, who is a legitimate 7-foot tall guy, who's also a large guy. Is that you might actually have someone who's physically more intimidating than Arnold Schwarzenegger, who can actually tower over him. So it kind of makes sense. They decided to keep it a female. So they looked at Famke Janssen from X-Men, Jennifer Lopez, and WWF wrestler Joanie Laurer, who went by the name of China, was considered. Her name came into it because she was recommended for the part by Arnold Schwarzenegger himself in an interview prior to filming. But through some contract things we'll talk about later, Schwarzenegger picked Kristanna Loken for the part because that was part of his contract that he got to pick his co-star. They don't know what happened with China. As you know, I'm a huge wrestling fan. There was a lot of talk about this leading up to the filming starting, like a lot. And it was believed that she was going to get the part. But at the same time, she had some issues she was dating a wrestler, Triple H, one of her sons at the time. Triple H ended up being unfaithful to her with Stephanie McMahon, Vince McMahon's daughter. In storyline, they had an affair and they got together and got married. And then real life imitated art and they got together.
So weird.
And some things kind of started not working out. China eventually left the company. And there was a rumor that went around that Vince McMahon was bad mouthing her to other entertainment people in Hollywood to try and keep her from getting movie parts and various other things, to include the possibility of being the female Terminator. Um, Arnold Schwarzenegger is a big wrestling fan. He has appeared on WWF many times. I think he was even elected or inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame at one point. As a matter of fact, I know he was. But so there's, like I said, there's rumors that, he knows Vince McMahon. There were rumors that Vince might have sent some bad words or bad mouthing of China to him, and that might have helped sway his decision to Kristanna Loken as compared to China. But the world will never know, because unfortunately China has since passed away. Rest in peace to China. All right, so we're ready to get started on the movie. So, if we remember back, we averted Judgment Day in Terminator 2, right? So Terminator 1, they destroyed the Terminator, but they were in a robotics factory.
Yeah.
And the robotics factory, Cyberdyne Systems, found parts of the Terminator, and that kind of helped them. That helped them in their planning and their thoughts, and kind of going reverse engineering was the word I was looking for. Kind of helped them reverse engineer, and so they were on their way. So in Terminator 2, as Arnold comes back, one of the things they do is they end up going to Miles Dyson, who was the head of this project, and he eventually ends up taking his own life and destroying the parts that they had at Cyberdyne Systems. And then after they kill the T-1000, Arnold Schwarzenegger takes himself down into some molten metal, kills himself, right? So in theory, there's no way, like, Judgment Day should not have happened, and there's no way we should get other Terminators coming back from the future to try and kill John Connor again. Make sense? Like, how does this happen?
Mm-hmm.
So in the novelization, it's not said in the movie, but in the novelization, it's brought up that a couple other companies ended up, Cyberdyne ended up going under, went bankrupt because of everything that happened. So some other companies that buy up whatever rights they can to stuff at Cyberdyne, including patents, rights, stuff they're working on, and that kind of ends up getting enveloped in the military-industrial complex. And the military ends up getting involved in dealing with these companies and taking over a lot of the projects. So, as we watch the movie, we see the military ends up taking over Skynet and various things, which still allows things to happen. As Arnold Schwarzenegger tells us, Judgment Day is inevitable. So once again, we're in Los Angeles. This time we see some stuff underwater. Once again, there's a lot of skulls in Los Angeles, man. Like, I know Los Angeles is a really big city, but where are all these skulls coming from? What are all these skulls just doing laying around? This time they're underwater. John Connor's giving us our overview, talks about how he's kind of going from place to place. He's keeping himself off the grid. You see he's just working like odd construction jobs. He's probably doing day labor stuff. You see a scene with him on the bridge. He's having a beer. He's out looking, and he's talking about how, his mom said, or I think it comes up later, his mom said every day should be a gift. We made it past Judgment Day. Side note as well, originally that was meant to be him thinking about taking his own life. But I think during test screenings and various things, it kind of was a little too dark, and they decided to hold off on that. We get our thunderstorm, various other things. Female Terminator appears. And once again, just as in everything else, times have not changed. The Terminators appear nude, right? No clothes.
Mm-hmm.
So, Kristanna Loken, who was a former fashion model, she's a very beautiful woman. They filmed on Rodeo Drive. It's the middle of the night. So they had to do it. She talked about how she had to do it as good as they could, as far as keeping it from people trying to get a view of a peep show, right? But she was not against the nude scene in this because she knew of the other movies, right? She knew it was integral to the story. So she's like, it's part of the story. Like, let's just go out there and do it. She was game for it. You know, she was professional. She did it. Our female Terminator appears. It's on Rodeo Drive in Beverly Hills, real swanky place. Comes up to a lady, I think in a Porsche, or I think it's a Lexus, rather. The lady's like, "Oh my God, are you okay? I like your car." And next thing you know, we see the female Terminator is in this lady's clothes, whipping around the streets of Beverly Hills in Los Angeles. And this is also where we see the first view of her powers, right? Because she picks up the car phone, and I don't know, some of you who might be watching this might not know those sounds are how you used to connect to the internet back in the day. So now everything's pretty much like one click and you're like, you just tap on it, you're there. Back in the day of like actual modems, when you had phone lines, you had to like plug a phone line into the modem and then stuff. And also if you were at your house and someone picked up the phone, you would get disconnected from the internet. But at the same time, you had to like dial a number and do some other things. And that sound would appear, you would hear that sound over your speakers. And that's how you would connect to the internet. Right? So this is a great time capsule of what connecting to the internet and what technology was like in the early 2000s. So she connects to the Los Angeles Unified School District's database, and there's like 8 to 10 people or so that she picks up. As we see later, and we hear later, these are people who are integral to John Connor. And let me make sure I get her name correct. Kate Brewster. They're integral to what they're doing with trying to help keep humanity alive. So her job is to go around and terminate them.
Yeah, they call them their like John's lieutenants.
Yeah, and at the time, these are like kids in high school. So 15-year-old kids opens the door. And Kristana Loken is there in front of him. And they're like, "Are you so and so?" And he's also looking for his sister, right? Yeah, she's upstairs. The next thing you know, she just pulls out a gun. Oh, before that, how does she get the gun?
Yeah, I was gonna say we gotta talk about this. This is the most 2003 thing in this movie, is when she gets pulled over by the cop, and then she looks at the billboard and then just enlarges her breasts.
Yeah, it's a picture of Adriana Lima, Victoria's Secret model, right? And so, funny note about that, they had to shoot that scene several times because the inflation device that they were using to enlarge her breasts kept malfunctioning, or like one would enlarge and not the other, and various other things kept happening. So, cop pulls her over. Okay, he comes up. It's a very attractive blonde with rather large breasts. She makes the comment of, "I like your gun," and then it kind of cuts away. Initially, they wanted to film that scene where he wasn't going to give her a ticket, and he was going to ask her out instead. But once again, they decided, it's not really the best thing. I like the way they went this time, but yeah, that is definitely
just cutting it off. Yeah,
most early 2000s thing we see. So yeah, the TX has also the name, the TX. That's also a 2000s name right there, without a shadow of a doubt. Everything had to have X in it in the early 2000s.
Apparently now too, Twitter had to change their old name to it.
Jesus Christ. So yeah, so she's going around killing teenagers in high school. Next we see our appearance of, this is I don't know if it's brought up in the movie, but this is a T-850, so this is an upgraded version of the T-800. Sent back in time. So once again, he comes out, and I'll say this again, I've said it the other 2 episodes. If I had the body like Arnold Schwarzenegger here, I don't think I'd ever wear clothes either. He had to do a lot of serious working out for like 6 months, because he wanted to get himself back into like peak physical shape for this, because he knew like people would pick at the movie. Arnold's a really smart guy. So, kind of keeping with this, in the late 90s, early 2000s, at the dawn of the internet, Arnold Schwarzenegger was one of the first celebrities to get a website based off of his name, arnoldschwarzenegger.com. Him or someone he was working with was also smart enough to get 20 to 30 or more websites with common misspellings of his name that would lead back to arnoldschwarzenegger.com. So, someone there was a little ahead of their time and definitely smart. So he didn't have to worry about someone squatting on something that he wanted. Like when the Washington football franchise there, the Commanders last year, a couple years ago, were changing their name. People start squatting on names, and some havoc ensued. So he walks up to a bar because, of course, he walks up to a bar. So first off, what's going on in this bar where the bouncer outside just sees a naked dude walk up and he's like, "Hey, you're supposed to go around back." Now we find out it's ladies' night and they have
Yeah, that's why. Yeah, he's like thinking he's the stripper that's already
but
stripped.
Okay, so like strippers, like they don't like. Typically, I think they would come into work fully clothed, and like they take their clothes off after they get to work, right? I don't know, like, but just just some random like dude walks up naked. Like, don't get me wrong, seeing that body, you'd think he's probably the adult entertainment for the evening, right?
Mm-hmm.
I get that. But, like, dude, you gotta titillate him, tease him a little bit. Like, you don't just start off with, like, really, dude. He pops in, it's ladies' night. There's a lot of women in there, and they are very happy to see Arnold Schwarzenegger walking through this bar. He sees the Terminator vision is going. He's trying to find someone who can match his size and everything so he can take their clothes, just like previously. The bouncer outside wasn't big enough. But unfortunately, the individual on stage who's just started dancing to the Village People's Macho Man is the right size. Also, really, we got to use the Village People and the guy with a lisp like he's a homosexual.
And again,
Once again, that's also a very early 2000s thing.
Another very early 2003 thing is Talk to the Hand. Which was, by the way, this scene is so great because I love him grabbing the hand and then leaning in to talk. I'll say this. We'll save my rating and stuff for later, obviously. But one thing that this movie got right, I think, was Schwarzenegger was great in the comedic moments. Talk to the hand, leaning in and saying now. He had a few lines in this movie where I thought it was hysterical, and it was a little bit more played up than the first two, right? Because the first two are a little bit more serious. Yeah. This felt like the more modern of them, in the sense of like you would have a movie nowadays that have a little bit more jokes in it like that, and I think he nailed it with his just straight face delivery.
He's actually a really funny guy.
Yeah.
And
I like him in Jingle All the Way too. I have to bring that up every time.
He's a great follow. I refuse to call it anything else on Twitter and various other forms of social media. He does a lot of charitable work. He does a lot of work, like some charitable organizations. There's even one thing where he was doing some work with the Special Olympics, and he does work with Special Olympics a lot. And he made a comment, or he did a post with the individual Special Olympics, and someone made a very nasty and rude comment and left it on his Twitter page, right? And Arnold wrote back, and he's like, "I could block you, but he's like, I'm going to give you a chance to learn from your mistakes." And he went on this whole talk about how the individuals in the Special Olympics are great people and they work hard, and it great show of human spirit and everything. Now, some other celebrities might have went off on the guy. Some other celebrities might have just blocked him, deleted the message, and tried to move on. But he tried to use it as a learning tool. Now, I don't know if the guy learned from it. I don't know if the guy was just an a-hole, stayed an a-hole. But that's not something everyone would do. He seems like a pretty decent guy. and everything. And like I said, he's a great follow on social media. He does some funny stuff and everything too. There was a contest way back in the day that I wish I didn't see until afterwards, where you could enter a contest and win a chance to like crush some stuff in a tank with Arnold Schwarzenegger. And I didn't find out about it till after it was over. But I was like, man, that would have been great. But yeah, his comedic scenes are definitely top notch in this one. He does talk to the hand.
No.
He gets his he gets
Putting the sunglasses on too. Again, that was
yeah.
another great moment.
I couldn't even. Yeah.
He plays it so straight.
Gets on a motorcycle and everything and goes on. We see John Connor again. He's not doing well in his life. There's a lot of people who have substance abuse issues, especially in the early 2000s. We find him breaking into an animal clinic and trying to go for some of the stuff there. Our TX is still going around killing random teenagers that are going to be his lieutenants, altering the course of history, right? It's unfortunate. We get introduced to Kate Brewster, Claire Danes' character.
Yeah.
Who, first time we get introduced to her, she's with, this was horrible. So we get the gist that she's with her fiance and they're doing wedding registry stuff, right? So they're at some store, and it's one of those things where like you're at the wedding registry and you go around and they give you a little gun, you scan the barcodes to add stuff to your wedding registry, right? Nowadays it's probably all smartphones. Like you can just go add like the UP, like do it online, or if you're gonna go in the store, you can just like scan it with your phone and add the UPC to stuff. But back then it was these big, guns with lasers on it. And she can't get it to work, and she's talking about, I hate machines. First of all, lady, how about you try actually scanning the barcode and not scanning the bowl itself? She was not doing very well with the scanning. But yeah, we get the whole, oh, I don't like machines, I hate machines, blah, blah, blah. She talks to her dad, who is a 3-star general. Her dad has to break some unfortunate news to her that he won't be able to make it to like the rehearsal dinner or whatever they had planned for the evening, because he's got some stuff going on. Apparently, the internet is starting to act up, and he's got some things kicking around that he's trying to work on, and he can't really. So we get the gist that while she's close to her dad, this has probably been an ongoing thing throughout her life, right? He's a 3-star general. So throughout his military career, there's probably a good chance that he wasn't around a ton, and various projects that he was working on would always take precedence and so on. I think they wanted to do it, but they cut it out of the script. It was meant to show that like that was something that happened throughout her life. Eventually, her mom and dad got divorced, but she still remained kind of close to her dad. But unfortunately, because he was always at the head of technology and doing stuff for the Air Force, his job. Excuse me. I don't know why I always get the hiccups when I come on here to record. His job would take a lot out of him. Later, we find out she works at a vet clinic, right? So she gets a call from a frantic customer about an emergency thing, so she's going to go open up the vet clinic for an emergency thing to take a sick cat. She kisses her fiance goodbye, heads to the vet clinic. She gets there, finds out someone broke in, starts stealing stuff. It's John Connor, right? So she eventually is smart enough, and that's also something that was meant to be in the script, but I think I cut out, because her dad was in the military and he exposed her to weapons and various things. While she's talking to John Connor, she's about to call the police. He tells her don't do that. He pulls out a gun. She's able to recognize it's not a real gun. It's a paintball gun. And that's how she's able to get the drop on him. She tells him, asks him if she's holding an empty pill bottle. This is stuff we used to chemically castrate dogs and cats or whatever. Throws it at him, overpowers him, shoots him with the paintball gun, throws him in a can. She recognizes from somebody's party back in high school that this is someone that she knew, John Connor. And that what happened to him, because all of a sudden one day,
Middle school, I think, because they
yeah, middle
mention it
school.
was like it's like the day before Terminator 2.
Yeah, like all of a sudden one day he disappeared. Then there was some stuff in the news with his mom and everything, and she never saw him again. And, obviously his life's not turning out well if he's breaking into uh, animal clinics to steal drugs. Gets a door, something at the doorbell, rings. It's the lady with the sick cat, which she says is probably, or Miss Brewster, Kate says probably just a hairball. She's trying to get the lady out of there because she's got John in a kennel in the back and someone broke in, so she's got to do some cleaning up. She goes back there to check on John. This is where our TX makes another appearance. Kills the lady.
Cat lady, yeah.
Asks if it is Kate Brewster, but the lady is dying. Can't really call. Very disgusting thing next. The TX kneels down, dips her finger in, tastes her blood, and says, "No, you're not Kate Brewster."
Yeah, yeah. And we get to see it again from another point of view. Later that scene or another scene where like we actually see from the TX's perspective of like it running it through the database and confirming that I think it's when she finds out it is John Connor's blood on the other
Yeah,
stuff.
on the
Yeah,
floor.
yeah.
Yeah, she's able. Why? I don't honestly why she did. She didn't do that the first time, right? Why did she have to taste the blood this time? Like, I know she's a machine, but that's just kind of nasty. Um, I get they're kind of trying to do for intimidation factor, but still, yeah. But yeah, eventually, the so okay. So what did you think of the TX here? What are your thoughts on the TX so far?
Um, I don't know really. I mean, like she was all right villain. I guess it gets to a point with these movies specifically. Like the first one, you know, the the Terminator, the T-800 is very, you know, kind of has a lot of the same scenes that she does, where it's like you think they might be dead, and then oh, here they come, like after this veterinary thing, and then like they do it again with Robert Patrick's T-1000, but like he's got all these different abilities and stuff. This one, it didn't feel that much different from the T-1000, and it just like there's a part right after this veterinary part where they go to the chase where I felt like the chase went on way too long and it kind of lost me after a certain length because it just kind of felt like we still didn't know anything. You know what I'm saying? Like we still didn't know why she was really hunting them at that point other than just, you know, what we know from the other movies. But like we didn't know, it wasn't as set up as well, I'll say. So no fault of the actors really. Just I felt like uh you know, we're seeing her and the T-800, you know, just kind of going in this, wrecking the whole street pretty much as they're chasing John Connor. And after a certain length, I was like, all right, I think we could wrap up the chase scene now. Like, I feel like we should get some actual advancements now.
Okay, so yeah, so real quick, she tries to kill people, blah blah blah. Eventually, she tries to kill Kate. That's when the T-850 comes in, right?
Also, this was ridiculous. I wrote this down in my notes. This part where he's driving the truck and somehow skips it perfectly over Claire Danes and
Yeah,
hits the
yeah.
TX when there's no way you could have planned to bounce it like that was ridiculous.
Look, they're machines. I'll give them a little bit of credit, maybe, but yeah, probably not. Like that's not happening in real life. I get that.
He
Like,
would have
yeah,
squashed her and then hit the TX, and then she would
yeah,
have been like, "Thanks for doing my job."
yeah. That was ridiculous. Kate gets thrown in the back of her truck. John Connor gets taken out. Blah blah blah. They start driving. Like you said, the TX isn't dead. She comes up. They kind of try to recreate the chase scene from Terminator 2, which, like, I have to say, I think the one from Terminator 2 is one of the all-time best chase scenes, I think, in cinematic history. Because at the time, a lot of the chase scenes you had seen were like stuff from like maybe the French Connection where you've got like smaller cars and
Yeah,
things.
yeah. None of
You didn't
the big
have
stuff.
like
Yeah.
this. You didn't have like this massive 18-wheeler that's like going through the city, like demolishing stuff, causing havoc with this chasing. Like the one in Terminator 2 was groundbreaking. So I think they're like, oh, let's do it again. Like I kind of get it, okay, but you can go to the well one time too many, and I think they did it. I don't know if they kept going to that well in the other ones because I haven't really seen any of the Terminators past this. I saw the Christian Bale one, that was it. But I don't know if I want to watch the other one.
That one
We'll see.
is Salvation, which is the sequel
Yeah.
to this one. I'll
In
say,
all fairness,
so I had to buy this, right? We talked about that. I had to buy this
yeah.
one, $12, whatever. The
Sorry.
the they had a sale on two other Terminator movies for $5 each. So I bought Dark Fate, okay, for $5 because from what I read, and we'll talk about later, I looked up what is canon to the Terminator universe.
Oh God.
And so far, according to canon, it is just Terminator, Terminator Judgment Day, and Terminator Dark Fate. So this one's no longer canon. People say because Dark Fate brings back, Linda Hamilton, and because apparently Cameron has some sort of involvement in that one. So I was like, hey, it's $5. I'll buy it so I can watch it because I think it's only streaming on like TBS with ads or something.
Jesus. Yeah, and this is the problem we talked about during the last couple episodes where as different studios get her, they keep trying to bring it back. They keep wanting to change like what's canon and let's move everything from okay, we're going to disregard everything from past this point. So, yeah, this one is not considered canon anymore. But and then I think there was like two or three other ones in between. I don't know. It's too much at times. Yeah, we get another chase scene. This time with a crane. The crane had some issues when they were trying to leading up to that chase scene where some people had to work on it like 24 hours for like several days straight because it would have cost a couple $1,000,000 to get a new crane, and they didn't have it in the budget to be able to get a new crane. So they had to have people work on it for several days straight, like nonstop, in order to get it up and running in order to use it for the scene. We get. I'm trying to think, where do we go from here? So there, we get more kind of exposition about how there's stuff that's not working. The internet's not working. TV's not working.
Yeah, in the
Stuff
gas
like that.
station,
Cell phone signals are down.
no credit cards. He can only take cash because the computer's been down or something.
Who had cash in order for them to use the pump? Because usually those are like pay before either you use your card or you pay before you pump. So who had cash in order for him to get gas for the truck?
I think there
And why
were
didn't
times though where they had like pay after pump, which they could have got away with because he doesn't pay for any of this stuff.
Yeah, and he gave the talk to the hand. So 2003, that might kind of be the that might be at the nexus point of that. I'll give you that. There was a deleted scene that they cut that talked about why Arnold Schwarzenegger was picking up the food. It wasn't necessarily for John and Kate. Some of it was for him to replenish his skin and protein cells and various other things. But once again, that got cut either for time or for story reasons. Yeah, so like nothing's working. As Arnold opens up the back of the truck, Kate jumps out. He throws her back in. And this is right in full view of the clerk at the store. So he now calls 911 to report a kidnapping. But I thought his phone wasn't working a minute ago. I don't know. So there's some more exposition about some party that they had back in the day that they knew each other from, right?
Yeah, this didn't work for me in the sense of she keeps bringing up this darn basement party, and I'm like,
Yeah.
the guy's name really threw me off for like the birthday party she kept saying, like whose basement it was. Um, like the first time she said it in the vet hospital, I was like, what is she saying here?
Kripke. I can't remember the first
Kripke,
name.
yeah.
But
But at first I'm thinking like a crypt keeper type thing, and I'm like, what is she saying? Yeah, but it's like Kripke. Um, and then they bring it up like 3 times, and I'm like, all right, I think we get it. That they had some sort of history there, so much so that like I wasn't shocked when he said she's your wife, in the future, because they've really banged it over my head at that point.
yeah, they used absolutely no subtlety in the fact that because they had a connection before, they were going to end up together somehow. Even though she had a fiance.
That dies, and
Even
then she's like totally chill afterwards. Yeah.
even though she has a fiance, and even though he's kind of skeevy because he's obviously an addict, and he's breaking into places stealing drugs, so he's not in the best of shape. And she even tells him, "You look like a mess." But yeah, so I guess that
I think where it
she's just
falls apart for me, Casey, is that like for I don't know 30 minutes she's in the back by herself, not being able to interact with anybody, or what feels like 30 minutes. That I'm like, there wasn't even time for to see like their interactions. Like as soon as she interacts with him, she's like, "Oh, Kripke's basement," and then boom, the TX appears, and then boom, she's in the back of the vet truck, and then that's when
yeah,
he finds out he's gonna marry her. It's like we haven't even seen them really interact.
yeah, and then yeah, not very well done. The Terminator ends up taking them to a cemetery where we find out Linda Hamilton's character, Sarah Connor, has died of leukemia. We find out from John that she was diagnosed. The doctors gave her 6 months to live. She lasted for a few years, and then eventually leukemia took over and took her away. And it was her words that said, "Every day is a gift after they stop Judgment Day." Old Arnie decides to bust into the crypt in the vault, pulls out the coffin. John is upset, rightfully so. Like he doesn't know what's going on here. So apparently, Sarah decided to be cremated, have her ashes spread throughout Mexico, and then, in accordance with her will, put a bunch of guns and weapons and grenade launchers and a minigun and various things in a coffin, and left it in this crypt. I'm not sure if that's even feasible. Like, I don't know if people check coffins before they put them in places, but it's like I don't know. Like that throws me off. Like I'm not really sure if this is gonna happen.
Yeah, it's a lot, this is another ridiculous scene. You know, I like the callback to the second one here when he shoots the cops and stuff, and then it says like no casualties, because it's kind of reinforcing that idea um of the how John had kind of told him
He's been reprogrammed in order
to
to
follow
not
John's
mess.
orders in the second one, and in this one, he still has not John's orders. We'll get to it. He's following Kate's, but that they kind of share those same beliefs of okay, no casualties here. So I really dug that. I'll tell you what else really worked for me. I thought he was going to play a bigger part in this, but the doctor coming back, and then I guess he somehow excused it all in his brain of thinking none of that had been real that he had saw in T2. And then he sees this and he's just kind of like, oh God, like here we are
Okay,
again.
so before we get to the doctor, we got some cops or the TX shows up at her fiance's house, right? Kills her fiance, recreates her fiance. Cops show up, say, hey, is this your fiance? Is Kay Brewster your fiance? There's been some things. She's been kidnapped. Gas station attendant found her outside of Victorville being kidnapped. So he goes, he goes with the cops. While he's with the cops, or the TX is with the cops, they get, okay, they found him. They're at a cemetery. Okay, great.
This is
Um,
brutal. This is brutal when he does when she does the reach through the chest. Oh,
yeah.
God.
kills the other cop,
Grabs
and
the
then just
wheel.
keeps driving. Which, okay, look, I'm not against that portion of using the wheel, but how? Like, you still need to hit the gas and the brakes.
True, true. You know, I think it was pretty funny, but I think one thing that made this scene work for me is the second cop's reaction was like so real. I think of like how I'd really react, where they're like what the hell is going, and then he dies. I'm like, how do you react to seeing somebody that you think is there to like go with you to get his wife back or his fiance back, and then
Just
just
put a hand through a car
Oh
seat
my god.
and through a human body.
Yeah.
Like, so yeah, that's amazing.
Then you just know you're dead
Uh,
next.
so they're still in the crypt, the Terminator and Kate and John. We see some tear gas come in, right? Kate runs out. So I'll say this. Anybody who's listening to this, hope this never happens. But if you end up finding yourself in a hostage situation, right? You're in a place that's being robbed or something, and at some point, tear gas gets thrown in. Under no circumstances should you try to leave the premises. What you need to do is just get down on the ground as soon as possible, lay as flat as possible. Don't move and take whatever instructions, because you'll have some very large, angry, burly men coming in soon that will start giving instructions. If you start moving or running, there's a good chance in the confusion you might get shot. Right? So especially like trying to run out of that crypt right there. Like, they don't know who, like, they know someone is in there with hostages.
Right.
That's
They don't
all
know who. Yeah.
They assume that the person is going to be armed and dangerous. There's a chance, like, someone might have an itchy trigger finger and, like, bullets might fly. So yeah, if hopefully this never happens, but if you find yourself in that situation, just get down on the ground and follow instructions from the people yelling at you. It's going to take them a couple minutes to figure out who is who, but it's the best thing for that situation. Not trying to get up and run and cause havoc, because you might end up having a bad time. But she runs out. They take her away. She's in the ambulance. She's in the back of an ambulance getting oxygen when the doctor comes up from the first two. And this is great because I didn't expect him when I saw this the first time, and it took me a second to realize that I'm like, oh man, this is the same guy from the first two. And okay, let's say you're the psychiatrist, right? You saw what happened in the police station in Terminator 1. You saw what happened with Sarah Connor at the mental institution in Terminator 2. Do you honestly think, maybe, I think your brain might kick in like his did and say, look, during times of stress, our brain kind of fills in things and might make things up that aren't real. And what you saw was not really happening. There was no robots that were trying to kill people. What would you be going through your head at this point?
It's tough because I think that's more acceptable if he hadn't been told by Sarah Connor for like the past year or two that is for sure what happened. You know what I'm saying? Like when he's talking to her in the hospital, and then, you know, it's the same, like he sees Arnold Schwarzenegger again both times. You know, like I can see him wanting to excuse it, I guess. But and it all depends on how it was covered up afterwards. We don't know how it was covered up at the hospital, you know, after they leave, to the point of what the real story is, who comes in to do all of that. We don't really know. But I thought it was, you know, I thought he was going to have a role of like, after the second one happened, and I know he was in this one, I thought maybe he'd have a role of like, being like, oh yeah, this is actually real. I saw it too. But he was just more there for like 2 lines and out.
Okay. So I play devil's advocate for a second here. So one, I don't know if he ever saw that Arnold was an actual robot.
You see
Like,
Robert Patrick, though.
Well, he saw what happened with Robert Patrick in the Liquid Net. Once again, that might kind of, He might be able to excuse that as during times of stress, like you never know what you're going to see. Like, and in all fairness, when you have eyewitnesses to very stressful events, each person can have witnessed the same exact thing happen, but when they recall it and tell it to police or to someone else, they give differing accounts of what happened. So maybe maybe he thinks he's seeing a liquid metal dude walk through bars at a mental institution was not what really happened. Like, if you think about it, like, I'd have to think, yeah, my brain is trying to do something. Two, in all fairness, Sarah Connor is in a mental institution, right? Yes, we need to do work on how we treat our people who need mental health help and how we treat them. And especially during times like this, in the 80s and 90s and early 2000s, where it was kind of Wild West, people were just doing whatever they wanted. But she was also in a mental hospital, right? So she was smart enough to try and say at some point that she didn't think some of this stuff was real, just so she'd get out and see her son. And then when it didn't go her way, she kind of went back on it. And she had a lot of,
and he knew she was making that up, right? Because like the switch, because I think I remember, like, it was when all the students came and he wanted to kind of like show this thing, and then she's like, oh no, that never happened. And then he's like, I have like all these students here, and like, why are you switching up?
So, like I said, I don't think he's physically seen Arnold as an actual robot. I think that might have changed some of his views. So I can understand why in his head, and at some point he's talking about, you see things that aren't real, horrible things, and it takes you years to get over. And just his face when he sees Arnold, and he's just like, nope, not staying around for this again. I'm out. I that's the only reaction to have at this point. Like, the havoc that dude causes. Because remember, as far as he knows, this is just a dude who killed a bunch of cops in Los Angeles in 1984. He caused all the havoc at the mental hospital. He killed a bunch of cops, or hurt a bunch of cops, in 91 after the mental hospital. So now, like, I'm sure he's never going to forget that face. And now he sees him again. So yeah, I'm sure, like, that's the only natural reaction right there, is to just, like, decide, nope, I'm out. I'm done. Okay, so we then get Sarah runs away. John and the Terminator talk about they have to find her. Sarah sees what she thinks is her fiance. What did you think of this scene?
Of which
when
scene?
Her fiance comes out of the cop car,
and
she's like happy to see him. She doesn't know it's a TX.
Yeah, she does kind of pick up a little bit though, doesn't she? Like, by his reaction, or does she just start changing? Right, she starts changing into.
Because also remember, at this point, Kate is just hearing stuff from Arnold.
Yeah,
and John Connor. So she hasn't seen, like, she saw the TX, right?
Yeah.
But once again, she might be able to throw that off. But now she sees the what is her fiance walk out, and all of a sudden start changing from her fiance into the TX that she remembers. And Claire Danes underrated actor. She's very good in this.
Yeah, she was great. She was I like Claire Danes. I saw that she was in this, and I was like, oh, that's good. She was young back then too. Not that she's not young still, but I mean, like, she was like early 20s when this movie.
Yeah, I think this wasn't too long after, like, Romeo and Juliet or something too. Might have been like 5 or 10 years after that.
But no, I mean, like, I kind of figured that she wasn't gonna die. So when you have the TX, I think it's funny that the TX for some reason wanted to change back to her initial look, because she probably could
instead of just waiting and get closer to her.
Yeah, she probably could have just easily killed her as the fiance, and then that would have been mission accomplished.
Yeah.
But then they come up in the hearse, and I like that too.
Yeah. What about John laying in the hearse? That was kind of weird. I kind of get it, but that was still kind of weird.
Well, yeah, I guess he had to get him out somehow. So this, Okay, this is another thing. So this
Or
coffin
the coffin. Yeah,
that they
that's what I
put
meant.
in with all the guns. I guess they also made this coffin bulletproof because this thing gets shot to hell.
I could see that Sarah Connor might want to, like, she might specify she needs like a bulletproof coffin or something for that. You never know when something like that's going to come in handy. Like, let's be realistic. You've already dealing with some out there things. So I can see her wanting like a top notch or
Well,
and
so
she looks like
this is my okay. So I guess I'm really am confused. Okay, on the coffin itself. So obviously it's under Sarah's name, but it's just guns. Did
yeah.
Sarah put that there, and somehow the
No, I think her
T-850
friends from
knows?
Mexico, the people that spread her ashes
Uh
and
huh.
things, and the people like remember in like Terminator 1 there was like the Mexican dude that
Yeah,
she
yeah.
went to. So it was probably some people that she hung out with and did stuff that were the ones who probably took care of her last wishes.
But
Because John said
Why would she do that?
John said she took off. John said he took off the day she passed away.
Yeah, but I mean, like, why
Um,
would she have a gun, a casket full of guns? She's thinking in case if something happens, John can go there and get them, or is she?
yeah, she was probably trying to pre-plan for like,
Okay, Judgment Day if it continues.
yeah. I mean, just because I think Sarah Connor was smart enough to understand it hadn't happened yet, but it doesn't mean it's not going to happen. You've already had weird time travel, so maybe they're still going to come back to try and kill him. Not it's not out of the realm of the possibility in this universe. I can kind of get. Um, so they come up on they end up going to a motorhome, or they have some more fighting. They lose the top of the hearse. They end up coming on a motorhome, which they steal. This is where we find out more about John and Kate's history. That we find out that Kate finds out her fiance is probably dead, or no, probably her fiance is dead. That Terminator explains to her that the TX can replicate anything it touches. Which I'm not sure when she touched. Oh no, now I think about it, I do know when she touched Kate. She touched him earlier in the movie because there was a point where she replicates Kate later. But her fiance's dead. Like you said, she's old. She's kind of upset for a minute, and then she's just kind of like, whatever. This is where we find out that John is not the one who sent the Terminator back. Kate did because John did. Because he was killed by that particular Terminator, who they
Yes.
chose because of his connection to him from when he was a child. So Kate sent John back, or Kate sent the Terminator back.
I like this.
So
I thought this was a
the
good
Terminator has to
twist.
follow Kate's orders. It doesn't have to follow John's orders in this portion.
Yeah, I thought this was a good twist. I thought the fact that they kind of excused it. I was wondering, okay, when we see the end of T2, like he's dead, like the Terminator, he's melted. And he did that to get rid of the chip so it doesn't happen. But then you see Schwarzenegger's coming back for T3, so I'm like, all right, how do they excuse this, right? And they actually came up with a good excuse of, all right, so they used this one to kill him because they knew he would let his guard down because he looks like the T800 he had when he was a child. So it looked, that fit really well with it. And then having the twist where he has to follow Kate's orders, I like too, because she's a little bit of a dick here, I'll say, because he asks, "How did I die?" And then he's like, "Oh no, you know what? Maybe I don't want to know." And then
Nah, I gotta find out.
she looks at Arnold and says, "How did he die?" And I'm like, "Okay, maybe he doesn't want to know."
Okay, but let's think about this. Let's think about this from. Okay, let's say it's you and Joy, right? And let's flip it. You find like at some point you and Joy don't get along, right? And then you find out you're going to get married and you're gonna have kids, which might be shocking in this portion because you're like drug drug user and I just lost my fiance. Like, what is going on here? But eventually, like the future says, we're gonna get married and have kids. Okay, just like I get it, you don't want to know, right? But that doesn't mean the other person might not want to know or need to know, and maybe they can stop that from happening.
And then she just looks at
Um,
him, and he's kind of like, yeah, I
yeah,
guess we're gonna find out. But I just thought it was funny because Well, you could ask him like later, but obviously the movie is not going to do that. But like in real life, you could be like, I got to get you aside and ask this if he doesn't want
Would
to
you
know.
want to know? If it was you, if you're John Connor in that situation, would you want to know?
Yes, because I feel like we're already trying to avoid this, right? So like if we are going to try to stop it, then I feel like I could stop my death. So I would want to know. In that case, I don't want to know in real life. Like if somebody came to me right now and said like I know how it's going to happen, but like in this future where like you're already trying to prevent the rise of the machines, then I would want to know. But like I think it's funny because you know he's kind of thinking like, oh, I don't want to know, like maybe because like do I want to know how I die? But also it's like it could have been anything. It could have been cancer. It could have been
Heart attack.
heart attack. But it's just we get the nice background story of it being the
Yeah.
Terminator himself.
And it's in like 2039 or something. So he's still,
He's
this
still
is,
got a while. Yeah, he's got
2003. So he's still
36
got like
years.
30. He's still got time, At the same time, they, so another thing they cut from the movie was all the Terminators that come off the assembly line look like Arnold Schwarzenegger. And I think it's in a deleted scene on one of the discs here. I think it's like Sergeant Carter or something. And they dubbed over his voice with like some horrible like southern sounding thing. But like basically like they found they found something and that's what they used. And then they for the next one, the one with Christian Bale, that's they Arnold Schwarzenegger makes a small cameo, but it's not really him. They just use his face on the body because they show like a Terminator assembly line, and they show like these Terminators coming out of the assembly line, and they all have their like his face, and like one of them like smiles and winks at the camera or something weird. I don't know. So, uh, they're trying to figure out what to do. They have a countdown because there's only like 3 hours till Judgment Day happens. Blah blah blah. Come to find out that one of the targets on the list is Kate's father, who is head of, it's not Cyberdyne,
Skynet.
Skynet, and everything. And this is also where we find out, I think this is where we find out where we don't have to listen to, we listen to Kate. The Terminator listens to Kate and not John. So they decide they have to go to this military base to find Kate's father to try and protect him. And maybe they can shut down Skynet from there. We get some more backstory. The internet's going wild. Things are not working. And now it's the virus or whatever it was that started infiltrating some military systems. So we got satellites that are out, subs that are out, missile silos that are acting weird. Kate's dad gets called from the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. Not a happy man because technically the country's open to attack right now. And as one of his people says, we could be being attacked right now and we don't even know it. Or we wouldn't know it. Kate's dad does not want to load Skynet and bring Skynet online because he doesn't think it's ready. Some of the people that work for him think otherwise, and they apparently told the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff that. So he gets an order to take Skynet online, which is where everything happens. You get the whole thing. Yes, no. He hits yes. Things are okay for a couple seconds, and then all hell breaks loose. At this time, we also see that the TX has made it to this military base in an Air Force uniform. Is just walking around willy-nilly. No badge, no access. I'm sure it's somebody that they haven't seen before and just wandering around a very top secret, high security area that nobody's like, hey, wait a minute. Like, I haven't been in areas like that top secret. I've been in some areas that need clearance. And usually you had to have a badge on. And like, you get a badge at the desk, or like if you're visiting, if you work there, you have a permanent badge that would have like your picture on it and stuff, like who you are. Like, and it's known to you, like that badge needs to be visible at all times. Like you can't just like, you can't get in without it, or like if you lose it, there's repercussions. So just because she's a very attractive blonde woman with a shapely figure who's walking around in her dress skirt. Like, is that the only reason she's able to just walk around here and nobody thinks anything? Probably. But
I guess she could, like, can she generate a badge? Like, she can generate
I'd say
outfits?
possibly. Like, they don't show it, but I think I saw somewhere too that there was also something where another scene they deleted or cut out was it was supposed to show her like attacking a guard or something. And that's how she got into the base, and then
Makes sense.
some other stuff happened.
They just
So
skipped
maybe,
that, so they're like, yeah, she got in here
yeah,
somehow. Yeah, whatever.
she got it. But I mean, let's be real. They were also sexualizing her because they kind of focused on her. They focused on her legs and the shape of
Mm-hmm.
her body in the skirt and everything. So I'm assuming that's probably partially how she was able to make it.
2003.
You know, so she goes into there and there's T1s, all these random robotic machines uh, that are still in plastic, and she starts before Skynet comes online, but she starts with her little finger thing that she starts and takes control of them and turns them on. Skynet comes online, uh, computers go haywire, and next thing you know, all these machines come out and start killing everybody. Before that, we have Kate runs in yelling for her dad. Did this part get you?
No, I knew it was the other one. Yeah. I
I
knew it
did
was
not
the
the first time
TX.
I saw it. I did not the first time I saw it. I thought maybe they made it there. Because immediately after she runs up, she is shot by Arnie. The Terminator like lets loose in her, and then that's when some other stuff comes out. Blah blah blah. Eventually, it comes out it is the TX who shoots Kate's dad. Um, she takes some grenades. She has a fight with the T-800, the T-850 there. Arnold talks about earlier how he's an obsolete machine compared to her physically and everything else, especially software wise, so he can't really compete with her. He did a fairly decent job during the fight, but eventually we know like the TX has to win, right? They tear this place apart. People are getting shot by robots, and there's flying drones and things. Kate and John talk to her dad, come to find out. They explain to him that Skynet actually was the virus. Skynet made the virus. It was the virus that started infecting everything because they knew eventually it would find ways into other things. And eventually it would force the humans to have to put Skynet online, which would give it more control. So he tells them about a place to go. I can't remember the name of the place. It skips my mind.
It's like a crystal mountain. I don't know, something like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Crystal Peak. Crystal
Crystal
Peak, I
Peak.
think is
Yeah.
what it was. Yeah. And there's some folders that they're gonna need inside his office, which he has a really nice office in that safe. Like I know you're a 3-star general, but that might be. And I know their budget probably appears off the books, but geez, some more fighting, shooting. The TX eventually ends up reprogramming Arnold's character, Arnold's Terminator, to take out John Connor. We get to there's an airplane, or before that they have to go through a whatever the cylinder was. They have to go through that in order to get to get to the runway. So John turns it on. It gives him a little bit of time, but the magnet comes on. As the Terminator keeps threatening to fire its weapon, as the TX keeps threatening to fire the weapon, instead of just firing at them, which probably could have killed them at some point. So she ends up stuck to the magnet. They get to the airplane. They see Arnold's Terminator walk up, but he's telling them to go away because he's been reprogrammed. He delivers a hell of a blow to Kate, knocks her completely out. I don't know how she's able to fly after receiving some major head trauma like that. He ends up rebooting himself because he doesn't want to kill John. That gives him a chance to get in the plane and fly to Crystal Peak. They get to Crystal Peak. As they're getting ready to go in, they have to start inputting some codes.
And this whole time, they think that they're going there to stop it.
Yeah, they think they're going in there to stop Skynet. They also think they're in the clear. Helicopter comes up at the last minute. It's our TX. Another helicopter comes up. It's our T-800. A little more fighting. But the blast door that they were trying to get into is about to close. The TX manages to hold it open, allows them to go through. And it has some high hydrogen cells inside of it that it ends up putting in the TX, terminating both of them. They're dead. They go through what looks like was probably like a recreation of like Cheyenne Mountain, which is like a military terminal used for something like this. Just in case you guys don't know, there are a couple places like this around the country, depending on where the president may be, where something major is to happen. In order for us to maintain a working government, they can shuttle our leadership off to. I think President Bush was shuttled there on to one of these places on 9/11. So there's talk about, I think Cheyenne Mountain is one of them in like Wyoming or the mountain ranges up there. Supposedly a couple places close to the White House in the Virginia area, Maryland area. I'm sure there's probably a couple other places and various other places around the country, depending where, like I said, depending where the president and other leadership might be. Basically, they're big ass fallout shelters that are buried stories into the mountains where they can maintain some communication and maintain a working government. So they get down there. John's upset because he realizes, like, hey, this isn't what, it's not what he thought he was going to. He thought he was going to destroy, Skynet. Kate's dad was getting them to safety. Especially once John told them that, like, hey, they're going to cause a nuclear attack to wipe out its enemy. Who's its enemy? Us, humanity. So he was trying to get them to the safest place possible, which was the smoker. They're there, like they don't know what's going on. And all of a sudden, radios start coming on, and it's people from all these other various places throughout the country trying to talk to somebody and find out. And that's where we get John Connor on the radio. Who is this? This is John Connor. Who's in charge there? I am. We need some more voiceover, and that's how our movie ends.
Depressing ending, really. I didn't see this coming. I thought they were gonna be able to stop it again, just like the other two movies, but nope.
So I agree with you. I didn't see it coming the first time I watched it, and I thought, like, wow, that's a horrible way. But then after I watched it this time, and I remember the line that Schwarzenegger said of Judgment Day is inevitable. So, like, we can keep going back and forth with this whole thing of, like, we stopped it this time, but they're still going to find a way to try and send someone back. And we stop it again, they're going to try and send someone back. Or we can just acknowledge the fact that, like, this is going to keep happening. Judgment Day is inevitable. Because we keep seeing, keeps happening in the future. Like, so we can either, like, keep trying to move forward, or we can just acknowledge, like, this is what it is. But yeah, that was a depressing ending. Like, I remember walking out, turning it off the first time, and like, wow, it kind of sucked. Not that the movie sucked, but I was just like, dude, let's see. Some notes real quick before we get to some other stuff. We talked about that one. Oh, Edward Furlong was supposed to reprise his role as John Connor initially.
Yes, I think I read this.
But he had a substance abuse problem, and that's how he got replaced by Nick Stahl. He said, Edward Furlong said, "It's the growing pains of me. Part of the project, had a very nice deal. I guess to celebrate, I went out and overdosed on coke and kind of destroyed the whole thing. But I learned my lesson. I'm back on track. Hopefully, he's still clean. That's unfortunate. You see that happen with a lot of child actors, where they skyrocket the fame early, and they had these big roles, and unfortunately, some horrible things happen to them. Luckily, that hasn't happened to the Harry Potter kids. Like, I'm glad that hasn't happened to them. The gas station the Terminator stops in is the same one they used in all three. They showed it at the end where pregnant Sarah stops before driving into the Mojave Desert. In Terminator 2, it's where Sarah camps for the night after she escapes from the hospital.
Oh, really?
I
I didn't realize it was the same place.
Let's see. When Claire attacked the Terminator the first time, Arnold Schwarzenegger told Claire Danes not to hold back. She hit him as hard as she could. Stan Winston and his team constructed a flawless, life-size, fully operational robotic replicas of Schwarzenegger and Kristanna Loken because certain sequences involving fire and explosions were too dangerous for them to perform. Stan Winston has done some great work throughout the years. The Doctor we talked about. Earl Bowen is the only actor to appear in the first 3 movies aside from Arnold Schwarzenegger. It's also his last film, his last screen appearance. He's done a ton of voiceover work since then, and unfortunately in January of this year he passed away from cancer. Kristanna Loken put on 15 pounds of muscle for her role. She also took miming classes because she had a limited number of lines. She had to learn how to communicate through facial expressions and body gestures. I think she did a good job.
Yeah,
with what she was working with. Like, let's not be realistic. She wasn't working with like the Godfather type of a script here. Nick Stahl, he had to audition 5 times and used 3 screen tests before and obviously the thing with Edward Furlong before he got the role of John Connor. He turned down his role to reappear in Terminator Salvation himself. So he was supposed to reprise his role in Salvation, but he turned it down. Lance Henriksen was supposed to reprise the role of Detective Vukovich from the original Terminator in 1984.
Oh, wow.
But the character was supposed to have been bound to a wheelchair following the events, but they dropped the idea. Which I think would have been a kind of a good callback too, especially with the Doctor, something like it. I think they could have worked something there. The character of Kate Brewster's fiance was originally named Scott Peterson. Due to some timing,
there
was an individual named Scott Peterson who was convicted of murdering his pregnant wife and their unborn child named Connor in late 2002. And the fiance's kidnapping, they quickly changed it to Scott Mason. But if you look in the credits, it's still listed Scott Peterson.
Huh.
Like I said, in the original script, in the scene where John was sitting on a bridge, he was contemplating and talking about taking his life because he felt his life had no meaning after Judgment Day had passed, and he thought they were past that point in life. So he was kind of worried. He was kind of openly talking about what happens now. Limbo Hamilton was reprised the role of Sarah Connor. She turned it down because she found the part insignificant since her character was going to die halfway through the screenplay, and she wasn't really mourned. So she was written out of the film, and that's why she was given what happened with. She had cancer, and that was it. He would not play the Terminator again until Genesis in 2015. Arnold.
Mm-hmm.
Due to serving as the governor of California, he was unavailable to appear in Salvation in 2009, where he was replaced by a CGI double, with his likeness being animated over Austrian bodybuilder and actor Roland Kittinger. The rich woman that the TX attacked in the beginning, initially they were going to have her coming from an ATM to show that like the ATM wasn't working, to further expound on the fact that like the internet and a lot of things weren't working. But they kind of scrapped that. It was Schwarzenegger's last starring role before being elected governor of California in October of 2003. The exact date was supposed to be July 25th, 2004 at 6:18 p.m. We got remixes on his lines. Instead of I'll be back, we got she'll be back and I'm back. We got a different one instead of come with me if you want to live. So initially the tagline was The War Begins 2003. They had to remove that tagline because
of a real war that began.
Yeah.
Okay, so real quick about the not the war, but the "Come with me if you want to live," and how
Yeah,
they really butchered that in this one. I think I was waiting for that line when he opened up the door, and it was like what was it? If you want to live, come with us, and I was like,
yeah,
what? What? Come
yeah,
on.
yeah.
This is something
That's
Star Wars does right with the,
if
I
you
have a
have a
bad
line,
feeling
you
about
put the
this.
line in. Yeah,
Yes. Yeah.
you put the line in. Like we need the line. Yeah, that was not a good choice there. The director wanted Schwarzenegger's character to be more, instead of a father figure, more like a tough drill instructor like Louis Gossett Jr. in Officer and Gentleman. Kind of worked. I get that. It disregards T2 3D Battle Across Time as if it never happened. That was the ride or the
The
attraction
attraction, yeah.
you talked about. Teddy Sarafian wrote a script for the movie. Um, the script he wrote would have cost more than $200 million to film, including a scene featuring a Boeing crashing in downtown LA and half the city exploding. They turned down the script. They used some of his idea, so that's how he got a story credit. Coralco was the studio behind Cutthroat Island and Showgirls, which is why it went bankrupt. They had a 30-second TV commercial during the Super Bowl that year. $2.1 billion, which now like is on the low end, but I think at the time that was one of those. That was one of the more expensive commercials.
Something cool that connects with what we were talking about these past few weeks, though, I wanted to share. I just read this that the first official trailer debuted in theaters with the release of Lord of the Rings: The Two Towers.
Ooh.
So it's funny that we talked about both of these trilogies at the same time.
So I want to. What was it? I think it was for the Phantom Menace. I want to say the first trailer premiered during, I think it was Meet Joe Black
I think you're
in the
right.
theaters. And Meet Joe Black went way over expectations that opening weekend and was number one at the box office because a bunch of Star Wars fans went to go see it, to see the trailer, and then left after the trailer. But they still got the movie still got credit because they paid for the ticket. So I want to say it was the Phantom Menace. I know it was Meet Joe Black.
Yes, Meet Joe Black. Yes, November
and it was
17th, 1998 was the trailer for Phantom Menace.
and it went ridiculous at the box office, way over what they expected because of that trailer. We already talked about it. Ang Lee was offered to direct it, but turned down to direct Hulk. And in the novelization, Cyberdyne goes bankrupt after Terminator 2. There was another company that took over Skynet's, that took over everything. And then Skynet cost the Pentagon $15 billion to get involved with. So that, like, the novelization kind of goes more into why the Pentagon was involved with it and how they ended up with it, instead of just, well, wait a minute, why is the military involved?
Yeah, a lot of that was very loosely, like that was probably the weakest part.
Yeah, it's just randomly all of a sudden the military's involved and with no explanation. Like, I mean, I get, especially me, I get that they're gonna jump on like technological stuff and whatever, but you could have gave us something in this. IMDb rankings: 6.3 out of 10, with 414,000 rankings. Rotten Tomatoes, they got 70% for the critic score from 207 reviews. 46% from the audience score with 207,000 reviews.
Yeah, that's lower than the IMDb for sure, right? IMDb 6, that would be like a 60%, 6.1 out of 10 or whatever. This is a 46.
Metacritic, it had a 66 from critic reviews of 41 of them. And 828 audience rankings gave it a 7.5. So for me, I would probably give this a 2.5. I think it's better, maybe 2.5, maybe 3. I think it's better than some people make it out to be. there were definitely some things that they could have improved on that just didn't make sense. We touched on a lot of them in here. I do like the idea of the female Terminator. I think that was cool. I was okay with that. Um, and I think it went downhill from here. And unfortunately, like, especially when you start getting into trilogies and series, sometimes that happens. And maybe, I'll admit, maybe because the following movies just kind of kept going further and further downhill, that might be tanking my idea of this movie because I know where it goes from here. But definitely not as good as Terminator 2 or the original Terminator. So, what say you?
Yeah, this is the weakest of the three, for sure, that we've watched. So I rated it accordingly. Now, this is where you might see the more lenient side of me coming out, because I was actually shocked you went 2.5 ish. I gave it 3. I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. I think the effects and the action are still pretty good. There's some action scenes that go on a little too long, kind of lose me a bit, where I start realizing, oh, I'm looking at my phone when I shouldn't be looking at my phone right now.
Yeah, I did that during the truck scene. Like, okay, kind of. I
Yeah,
picked
that's
it
what
up,
I
and
did
that's when I
too.
started looking
Yeah.
some stuff up. I was like, okay, we get it. They're trying to recreate the Terminator 2 scene. Come on, guys.
But I gave it 3 out of 5. It could have. I probably could have went 2.5 as well. But look, uh, I enjoyed for what it was. I didn't. I don't think it like when I heard how bad people think about this movie. I thought it was gonna probably like shit on the legacy a lot more than it did, and it didn't really. Like they still had some nice callbacks to the first two. They tried to continue some stuff. The ending didn't really work for me because I guess now it's like if I were to watch these three as a trilogy, it kind of ends on such a sour note. And then you're thinking, I know what they were trying to do. Like, okay, like you said, Judgment Day is inevitable. For the next one, which they go to in Salvation, we can start in the future. But I think the one thing that works the best with these Terminator movies is not the future. It's the fact that they come back to the past trying to
Yeah.
prevent that, or that's what I think makes those movies special. So I had, it was a little knocking it down a bit too, but I think the comedy really worked for me that made it a 3 instead of a 2.5. Having Arnold grab somebody's hand and be like, now, and then reiterating the talk to the hand and the sunglasses. Another scene when they get to the RV and they open up the hearse door and it just falls off. Like that type of stuff really worked for me in this. So I gave it a more lenient grade.
So you know what? I'll say this. I think you can tell they were trying to extend the Terminator universe after this by showing, Judgment Day was inevitable and it did happen. Like they were trying to go for more sequels. I think you kind of convinced me. I think I'll go with it. I think had I saw this in the theater, it probably would have been like a 2.5. Like that's one of those because it's one of those where you kind of start looking at how much you paid to go see it or what you put in. Like video games are a prime example. Video games $70. You pay $70 and you have a bad time with that game. Like it's one of those like, wow, I really wasted my money. But when you get stuff like Game Pass or like Netflix or like I rented this at the when it first came out. When you can rent it and see it and you're only wasting $3 to rent it, it's not as bad as if you spent $10 to $15 a ticket and then $30 for popcorn and drinks and a hot dog and various other things to get there, and then you watch it and then you're like, wow, really? So I think this is a prime example of one of those movies of like where you see it and how you see it and how much what went into seeing it I don't want to say contaminate, but it might influence how you view the movie.
Right. All right.
So what is coming up next for us, Drew?
Well, we're staying in the early aughts. I mean, we've been in this with this movie and the 3 Lord of the Rings movies, and now with this upcoming movie, we've been staying in the 2001 to 3 era.
You know what? That wasn't a bad time for movies, though. Like you said, we got those. I think some of the first Harry Potter movies came out.
13 Ghosts.
What's up?
13 Ghosts.
Um,
2001 as well.
yeah, but I mean, that was a decent time for movies. We
Yeah, Star
Pirates of the
Wars,
Caribbean.
Pirates, franchises
Uh,
especially were strong in the early 2000s. But we're going with a movie that's tied to my first pick, which was Airplane, because this is directed by Jerry Zucker, who also wrote and directed Airplane with the other Zuckers. With the other Zucker, right? It was like a brother duo for
set of
yeah.
brothers or
It
something.
was Jerry and David, and then they had somebody else with them. This was directed by Jerry Zucker. It's written by Andy Breckman, who created Monk. All right, so
Oh wow,
there's a wild thing for you. And it starred Rowan Atkinson, John Cleese, Whoopi
Mr.
Goldberg,
Bean.
Cuba Gooding Jr., Seth Green, John Lovitz, Brecken Meyer, and Amy Smart. I'm talking about the 2001 cult classic Rat Race. Great comedy. We are watching Rat Race next time, which is, uh, another like spoof-esque movie. It's a fun comedy. Uh, I would say loosely tied to the Mad World, right?
Yeah, it's like a modern day remake of a mad world.
Yeah,
Or
a little.
however many Mads are in that title.
I'll say yeah, way more modern than that. But um, I'm really excited to talk about this one because I haven't watched it in years, and it is one of the comedies I've just. I think it was one I kept finding on TV a lot, like Comedy Central or like TBS.
TBS.
And then I eventually bought the DVD, and I was like, I gotta own this thing. And I eventually, like, my grandmother is a big Mr. Bean fan, and my grandfather and her are separated. They were but they get along. So my grandfather was staying the night there to like hang out and go to the doctors the next day or whatever. And they wanted a movie, and I said, take Rat Race. I think you'll like this. Rowan Atkinson, John Cleese, I think they would like that. They did enjoy it. So I'm very excited to talk about Rat Race. It can be found streaming on Paramount Plus.
Okay, so I'll say this. Number one, whatever happened to Amy Smart? She was like a darling
She was
during
everywhere.
this time.
Was she in Road
Yes,
Trip?
I think yeah, she was, and then she kind of like I haven't seen her in a while. Like, whatever happened to her? Um, Two, Mr. Bean and John Cleese, like comedy legends right there. Rowan Atkinson and John Cleese rather. But also, I remember when I was a kid watching It's a Mad World. And I don't know why that movie just struck something with me, and I loved it. It was an awesome movie, and I was like, this is great. And then I remember hearing about this movie and when it was going to come out, and I was like, oh, I need to go see that. And then, for whatever reason, I never did. And like you said, I would see it on like TBS or Comedy Central. But like we talked about before, especially with Airplane, I would go around and it would be like, I would catch it part of the way through. Like I couldn't catch it at the beginning. So it was one of those like, you know what? I know it'll be on again. I'll catch it later. And I just never did. And now I'm kind of upset that I never caught it later.
We'll dive deep into Amy Smart next week too, because I just looked at her filmography and like it is loaded from 96 to like 05, 06. And then it kind of tails off a little bit. But she's been in some stuff recently. So we'll talk all about Amy Smart and the rest of the cast, which is an all-star cast, next week when we talk Rat Race. So yeah. Thank you all for watching and listening along with us. If you want to follow us, all of our information is in the show notes on your podcatcher or on the YouTube video below. Send us your thoughts on any of these movies as we continue our journey, or if you have recommendations for one that you think we may not have seen. And have a great rest of your week, and we'll catch you next time.